Chosen one, stop. Right there. Don't you dare scroll past this. Why can't you sleep through the night anymore? Why does your chest feel like it's carrying a weight you can't name? Why does every conversation, every news report, every family dinner feel like theater while something real burns beneath the surface? You feel it, don't you? That electric current running through your bones, that whisper in your spirit that keeps saying something's coming, that restlessness that makes you pace your living room at 2 a.m., staring out windows at a world that suddenly feels foreign. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What you're experiencing isn't anxiety, it's not age, it's not your imagination playing tricks on you, it's recognition. Your spirit is picking up frequencies from heaven that most people can't hear. While they're sleeping, you're receiving downloads. While they're distracted by politics and prices, you're being prepared for something so massive that hell itself has been working overtime to keep you confused about what's happening inside you. This isn't a scroll you stumbled across while browsing YouTube. This is a siren, a trumpet blast disguised as a whisper, a divine interruption orchestrated by the Almighty Himself, because what I'm about to tell you absolutely cannot wait another day. Stop what you're doing, don't move, because if you're watching this, something sacred has already begun. 3 nights ago, I was awakened at 3:17 a.m. by what I can only describe as the voice of the Lord thundering through my spirit. Tell them it's time. Tell them to start hiding when it happens. Tell them this is the moment they feared. Before I go deeper, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating. You're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. But here's what's shaking me to my core. God didn't just give me a message for you tonight. He gave me a warning. And that warning has 3 words that will change everything you think you know about what's coming. When it happens, what happens? When the thing your spirit has been preparing for finally breaks through the surface of this fake reality we've been living in. When the facade crumbles, and only those who've been walking in the secret place with God will know how to navigate what comes next. Why do you feel like something's coming? Because something is coming. Why does everything normal feel fake now? Because it is fake. The matrix is a glitching, chosen one, and you're one of the few who can see the code. And when it happens, you'll know. But will you be ready? Type I feel this if something already stirred in your chest before I even spoke, because what I'm about to reveal will either prepare you for the greatest spiritual battle of your lifetime, or you'll miss the very moment heaven has been preparing you for since birth. The clock is ticking, the shift has already begun, and they're terrified you might actually be ready for it. Have you been waking up at 3:17 a.m. with your heart pounding for no reason? Do you find yourself staring at people in grocery stores, wondering if they feel it too, that electric undercurrent humming beneath everything that used to feel normal? Have you caught yourself holding your breath, waiting for something you can't name, but know is coming? You're not losing your mind, chosen one. You're gaining clarity. When it happens, and I need you to burn that phrase into your spirit, when it happens, everything you thought was solid will reveal itself as smoke. Everything you trusted as permanent will crumble like autumn leaves, and only those who've been walking in the secret place with God will understand that what looks like chaos is actually divine order being restored. When it happens, let me tell you what that phrase has been doing to my spirit for 3 sleepless nights. It's been pulsing through my consciousness like a divine heartbeat, growing louder, more urgent, more impossible to ignore. Because God doesn't whisper warnings about comfortable seasons. He thunders alerts about moments that will separate the wheat from the chaff. Daniel 12:1 declares, "There will be a time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation, not might be, will be." And the chosen one, that time isn't coming, it's here. It's been building beneath the surface like a massive earthquake, and the tremors you've been feeling in your spirit, those aren't aftershocks, those are warnings. You've been experiencing the symptoms, haven't you? That sudden disorientation when you walk into familiar places that now feel foreign. That strange energy crackling through your nervous system, making your skin feel too tight, your chest too small for the fire burning inside. That sudden isolation, even from people you've known for decades, like you're speaking a language they can no longer understand. It's like you're standing on the edge of a cliff you can't see yet, but your bones know the fall is close. Here's what's really happening, and I need you to listen with your spirit, not just your ears. The enemy has been working over Timano because you're weak, but because you're waking up. Every attack you've endured, every betrayal that cut deep, every financial pressure that should have broken you but didn't, it wasn't random. It was strategic. Hell saw what heaven was preparing for you, and they've been trying to neutralize the threat before you could fully activate. But you survived. You're still here, and that terrifies them. When it happens, the comfortable Christianity that's been preached from padded pews will be exposed as powerless. When it happens, the political solutions people have been trusting will crumble faster than sandcastles in a hurricane. When it happens, only those who know their God really know Him will stand. Matthew 24:24 warns, "False Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect." If possible. Do you hear that? Even the enemy knows there's something about you that can't be fooled, can't be bought, can't be broken. You've been inoculated by suffering, vaccinated by betrayal, made bulletproof by walking through fires that should have consumed you. This is why you've felt so restless lately. This is why normal conversations feel hollow, why church services feel empty, why the news feels like theater. Your spirit is picking up frequencies that most people can't hear. You're receiving intel from heaven about what's brewing beneath the surface of this fake reality we've been living in. When you see the glitch, withdraw. That's not cowardice, beloved. That's wisdom. When the systems start breaking down, and they are breaking down when the facade finally cracks and people start panicking, you don't need to be in the middle of the chaos trying to convince anyone of anything. You need to be hidden in the shadow of the Almighty, watching from a secret place, interceding for a world that's about to discover they built their lives on sand. Psalm 91:1 promises, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." Not visit the secret place. Dwell there. I live there. Make it your permanent address. Because when it happens, geography won't matter. Politics won't matter. Bank accounts won't matter. Only your position in God will determine whether you stand or fall. You've been feeling it intensify, haven't you? That pull to withdraw, to simplify, to stop caring about things that used to consume you. That's not depression, chosen one. That's divine positioning. God is pulling you back from the cliff edge before the avalanche begins. The enemy is intensifying his attacks not because you're weak, but because you're waking up to something he's desperate to keep hidden. Every strange dream, every sudden knowing, every moment when you see through the lies everyone else believes, that's your spiritual eyes, opening to a reality most people can't handle. When it happens, you'll understand why you had to go through everything you've endured. Why did you have to be isolated? Why you had to be misunderstood? Why you had to be refined in fires that nearly consumed you? Because only those who've learned to trust God in the dark can guide others when the lights go out. If you've been feeling this, drop "I saw the signs" in the comments. You're not alone, you're aligned. And what's coming next will prove that everything you've suffered was preparation for the most important assignment of your life. But first, you need to understand why you were hidden when others were elevated. Dear chosen one, I need to ask you something that might cut deeper than a surgeon's blade. How many Sunday mornings have you sat in that same pew, watching the pastor call forward the young leaders, the emerging voices, the ones with energy and vision? How many times have you watched your own children receive opportunities you prayed for decades to see? How many nights have you whispered into your pillow, "God, did you forget I'm still here?" Listen to me carefully. Every single time you felt invisible, every moment you wondered if your season had passed, every ache in your chest when others got promoted while you got passed over, that wasn't abandonment. That was the appointment. You've been asking the wrong question for years. You've been asking, "Why haven't you used me yet?" When God has been answering, "Because I've been preparing you for something they could never handle." Your isolation was insulation. Think about this. When a master craftsman creates his most precious work, does he display it in the window while it's still being carved? Does he let every passerby handle the diamond while it's still being cut? No, he keeps it hidden, protected, covered until the moment of unveiling. And beloved, you've been in the master's workshop, not in the master's graveyard. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, thinking his calling had expired. 40 years. Can you imagine the thoughts that tormented his mind? I blew it with Pharaoh. I killed a man. I'm tending sheep when I was trained for palaces. God's done with me. But what Moses couldn't see was that every year in that desert, every lesson learned in isolation, every skill honed in obscurity, was preparation for the moment when God would say, "Now you're ready to lead 2 million people out of bondage." Moses was 80 years old when the burning bush spoke his name. 80. In today's world, they'd have put him in assisted living. But God was just getting started with him. You think you missed your moment? Anna the prophetess spent her entire adult life in the temple widowed after just 7 years of marriage, fasting and praying for over 70 years. 70 years. People probably whispered, "Poor old Anna, wasting her life in that temple." But when baby Jesus was brought to be dedicated, it was Anna, 84-year-old Anna, who became the first evangelist, proclaiming the Messiah to all who looked for redemption in Jerusalem. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your credential. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what makes me weep for the chosen ones sitting in America right now. You've been lied to. The enemy has whispered the same poisonous lie to every generation of God's hidden ones. Your time has passed. You missed it. God's moved on to younger vessels. That's not just wrong, it's demonic. Because what Satan fears most isn't your youthful energy. What terrifies hell is your tested faithfulness, your proven character, your unshakable trust that comes only from walking with God through decades of valleys and still choosing to believe his promises. Caleb was 85 years old when he looked at the mountain that the 40-year-old warriors were afraid to climb and said, "Give me this mountain." Joshua 14:11 records his words, "I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then." What if you weren't late? What if you were preserved? While others built platforms, you were being built in private. While they accumulated followers, you accumulated faith. While they chased applause, you learned to hear God's whisper in the silence. Every disappointment that should have made you bitter made you better. Every door that slammed in your face was God, protecting you from settling for less than his best. You've watched others rise while you waited. That wasn't rejection, it was protection. God was shielding you from premature exposure, because what he's been building in you requires character that can only be forged in the hidden place. But here's the urgent truth that's burning in my spirit right now. The hiding season is ending. The preparation phase is complete. And what the enemy thought was God forgetting you was actually God positioning you for the hour we're about to enter. You see, what's coming requires more than talent. It requires trust. What's ahead demands more than charisma. It demands character. The storm that's approaching won't be weathered by those who built on sand during sunny seasons. It will only be survived by those who learned to build on the rock when nobody was watching. Your 60, 70, 80 years of faithful obscurity weren't wasted time. They were investment time. Every prayer whispered in the dark made a deposit in heaven's vault. Every tear shed in secret watered the ground for this harvest. Every moment you chose faith over fear when circumstances screamed otherwise was earning you authority in the spirit realm that the young and untested simply cannot carry. The world is about to need what only you have: the deep well of proven faithfulness, the unshakable confidence in God's character that comes from watching him show up in impossible situations for decades, the spiritual authority that can only be earned through years of choosing his voice over the voices of doubt, fear, and disappointment. Your isolation was insulation. Your delay was a divine strategy. Your hiddenness was heaven's protection, and the moment is approaching when God will unveil what He's been building in secret. When the world will need voices that carry the weight of tested truth. When families will need patriarchs and matriarchs who know how to stand in the gap. When communities will need elders who remember what real faith looks like. Type, "He didn't forget me" if your spirit feels this like a thunderclap, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly why the enemy worked so hard to convince you that you were forgotten. When the truth is, you were the one they feared would remember who you really are. You want to know why your life has been so hard? Why every time you got close to breakthrough, something knocked you back 3 steps? Why do the people closest to you turn into strangers overnight? Why did the doors slam shut just when victory seemed within reach? I'm about to tell you something that will shatter everything you thought you knew about your suffering. They saw you coming before you even arrived. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. The enemy didn't attack you because you were weak. He attacked you because he recognized what God had planted in you before you took your first breath. Hell doesn't waste ammunition on empty vessels. Satan doesn't deploy his best demons against ordinary people. But you've been in his crosshairs since the day you were born. Think about this. Really think about it. Why has your family been under assault for generations? Why did addiction, poverty, and broken relationships follow your bloodline like a curse? Why did you feel different from childhood, like you were carrying something that made others uncomfortable? Because the forces of darkness saw your awakening coming 70, 80, 90 years ago, and they've been trying to kill what God was building in you ever since. You weren't supposed to survive long enough to wake up. That car accident when you were 16 that should have killed you but didn't. That diagnosis they said would end you, but somehow you're still here. That financial collapse that should have destroyed you, but you found a way through. That betrayal that should have broken you, but only made you stronger. That depression that whispered, "End it all," but you chose to fight another day. Every single one of those moments was a targeted assassination attempt on your destiny. Hell threw everything it had at you, because it knew if you ever figured out who you really are, if you ever woke up to the authority flowing through your bloodstream, if you ever stepped into the calling that's been burning in your bones, the reign of terror would be over. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what makes me weep for the chosen ones who never understood what was happening to them. You thought those attacks meant you were cursed. You thought the suffering was proof that God didn't love you. You thought the betrayals meant you were worthless. No, beloved, those attacks were proof that you're dangerous. Look at Jesus. Before he was old enough to speak his first word, Herod ordered the massacre of every baby boy in Bethlehem. Why? Because the enemy knew something was coming that would threaten his kingdom. Matthew 2:16 tells us about this slaughter of the innocent babies murdered because hell was terrified of one child. The same thing happened to you. Not with physical swords, but with spiritual warfare designed to kill your purpose before it could manifest. That's why the attacks started in childhood. That's why betrayal kept repeating. Every rejection, every abandonment, every moment you felt forgotten was actually confirmation that you carry something hell desperately wants to stop. You've been like Daniel, in the lion's den your entire life. But here's what most people miss about that story. The lions didn't refuse to eat Daniel because God made them vegetarians for the night. They didn't touch him because they recognized divine authority when they saw it. Even predators know when they're in the presence of the supernatural. That's you, chosen one. You've been walking through lions' dens for decades, and somehow, mysteriously, supernaturally, you're still standing. You're still breathing. You're still believing. That's not luck. That's not a coincidence. That's divine protection over someone carrying heaven's frequency. But here's where it gets deeper. Here's where the enemy's strategy becomes clear. Hell isn't afraid of churchgoers. It's not threatened by people who show up on Sundays, sing the hymns, and go home to live ordinary lives. No, the enemy can work with that. He can manage that level of spirituality. But you know what terrifies him? People who pray in secret. People who carry conversation with God like an ongoing dialogue. People who've learned to hear his voice in the silence. People who've been refined by fire until they trust God's character, even when they can't see his plan. Hell isn't afraid of churchgoers. It's afraid of people who wake up in hiding. And that's exactly what you are. You've been like a sleeper agent of heaven, hidden in enemy territory for decades. You thought you were just surviving, but God was positioning you. You thought you were just enduring, but heaven was installing equipment. You thought you were just getting older, but the Almighty was preparing you for the assignment of your lifetime. Think about this. Where have you been all these years? In the workplace, in the neighborhood, in the grocery store, in the doctor's office, in the family gatherings. Right there in the middle of everyday life, carrying the presence of God into spaces where no preacher would ever be invited. You don't need a stage. You are the weapon. You don't need a platform. You are the portal. You don't need recognition. You need activation. And that activation has been building in your spirit for years, waiting for this exact moment when heaven says now. Step out of hiding. The world needs what you carry. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. You've been in hand-to-hand combat with principalities for decades. You've been fighting powers and dominions that most people don't even believe exist. But here's what the enemy didn't count on. Every attack he sent to destroy you actually prepared you. Every betrayal that should have made you bitter instead made you compassionate. Every financial hit that should have broken your faith instead taught you that God is your provider. Every health scare that should have filled you with fear instead showed you that your life is hidden with Christ. You've been forged in fires that would have consumed ordinary people. You've survived pressures that would have crushed weaker vessels. You've endured isolation that would have driven others insane. And now, right now, all of that suffering is about to make sense, because what hell feared most is finally happening. You're waking up, not just to who you are, but to why you're here. Not just to your identity, but to your authority. Not just to your calling, but to your timing. The enemy thought if he could keep you confused long enough, overwhelmed long enough, broken long enough, you'd never discover the nuclear weapon of anointing God placed in your spirit before the foundation of the world. He was wrong. You survived the cave, you endured the silence, you passed every test hell threw at you, and now heaven is removing the camouflage. The hiding season is over, the activation has begun. But knowing you were targeted is just the beginning. Because if they feared your awakening this much, can you imagine what they'll do when you actually step into your assignment? Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you will shatter every comfortable illusion you've been clinging to about the world around you. We're not waiting on the wave. The wave has already crashed. The water just hasn't reached your feet yet. You think we're living through turbulent times. You think we're experiencing a rough season that will eventually smooth out. You think if we just hold on a little longer, things will go back to normal. There is no normal to go back to. The old world isn't crumbling. It's already collapsed. The echo is just catching up. Right now, as I speak these words, you're sitting in the ruins of a civilization that died 3 years ago. The buildings are still standing. The traffic lights still work. People still go to work, still pay their bills, still pretend everything is fine. But the foundation cracked so deeply that what you're seeing now is just the afterimage of what once was. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. When was the last time anything felt solid? When did you last look at the news and feel like you were getting the truth instead of theater? When did you last trust the institutions that raised you? Your government, your banks, your churches? When did you last believe they were actually working for your good? You can't remember, can you? Because your spirit has been screaming what your mind refuses to accept. The systems you trusted your entire life have already failed. They're just still moving, like a chicken with its head cut off. Daniel saw this moment 2,500 years ago. In Daniel 2:44, he prophesied, "In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed." But notice what comes right before that verse. Statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream gets struck by a stone, and the entire thing crumbles to dust. That stone has already been thrown, beloved. The impact happened. What you're witnessing isn't the beginning of the collapse, it's the settling of the debris. Think about your own life for a moment. When did you stop trusting your doctor to actually heal you? When did you realize your pension might not be there when you need it? When did you look at your grown children and realize they've been programmed by a culture that hates everything you hold sacred? These aren't random disappointments. This is systematic demolition. The political system? It's not broken. It's working exactly as designed. Designed to keep you distracted while real power operates in shadows you'll never see. The economic system? Your dollar has lost 96% of its value since 1913. And they're printing money faster than you can count it. The spiritual system? Half the churches in America can't tell you if Jesus is the only way to salvation. But here's what's going to shock you. God orchestrated this collapse. Isaiah 24:5 declares, "The earth is defiled by its people. They have disobeyed the laws, violated the statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant." When a society reaches the point where good is called evil and evil is called good, when children are sacrificed for convenience and wisdom is mocked as foolishness, God doesn't patch the system, He replaces it. You've been feeling it in your bones, haven't you? That sense that everything is shifting beneath your feet. That's not anxiety, dear one. That's a spiritual radar. You're detecting the frequency of divine judgment mixed with divine mercy. The judgment isn't coming. It's here. The mercy isn't delayed, it's active. And you precious, weathered saint, you're standing at the intersection of both. This is why you can't sleep. This is why food tastes different. This is why conversations with old friends feel hollow. This is why you stare at your reflection and sometimes don't recognize the person looking back. You're living in two worlds simultaneously, the dying one and the one being born. Matthew 24:8 calls these the beginning of birth pains. But birth pains don't announce that labor might start someday. Birth pains announce that labor has already begun, and something new is about to emerge. The question burning in heaven right now is this: will you waste precious time trying to resuscitate a corpse, or will you position yourself for what's being birthed? Because here's the shocking truth they don't want you to understand. While the old systems collapse, new ones are already forming. While the visible world shakes apart, an invisible kingdom is manifesting in ways your grandparents could never have imagined. You think cryptocurrency is just about money? You think the internet is just about communication? You think the breakdown of traditional media is just chaos? No, chosen one. These are the birth pangs of a new economic system, a new information system, a new way of organizing human society. And God's people, His awakened ones, His hidden generals, His secret weapons, they're not going to be victims of this transition. They're going to be the architects of what comes next. But only if they stop clinging to what's already dead. Revelation 21:5 thunders across eternity. "Behold, I am making all things new." Not some things, not most things, all things. The marriage covenant, the economic structure, the way communities form, the way wisdom is passed down, the way authority operates, everything is being remade according to heaven's blueprint. You can't wait for normal to return because normal was the problem. Normal was a system built on lies, sustained by deception, and destined for destruction. You have to become what comes next. This is why you felt so isolated. This is why your own family sometimes looks at you like you're speaking a foreign language. This is why the church you've attended for 30 years suddenly feels cold and lifeless. You're not backsliding, beloved. You're outgrowing. Your spirit has been receiving downloads from the future, while everyone else is trying to download updates for the past. The shift isn't coming, it's here. The transition isn't starting, it's accelerating. The new world isn't being planned, it's being populated by those who can see beyond the smoke and mirrors of what's dying. Drop, I've felt the shift, if you know. Deep down, it already started. Because what I'm about to tell you next will explain why you've been feeling so strange, so disconnected, so different. You haven't been losing your mind. You've been receiving your assignment. And that assignment requires you to understand something that will change everything about how you see your final years on this earth. They didn't just hide you from the world, they hid you for the world. and the moment for your unveiling has arrived. Listen to me, chosen one. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been asking God the same tormenting question: why did you hide me? Why did you keep me in the shadows while others rose? Why did you let me feel invisible when I had so much to give? Tonight, I'm going to shatter that lie with a truth so powerful it will rewrite your entire understanding of your life story. You weren't hidden because you were weak. You were hidden because your strength was still being sharpened. Think about this for a moment. When David was anointed king by Samuel, where did he go? Back to the fields, back to the sheep, back to obscurity. For 15 years he carried the oil of kingship while living like a fugitive. 15 years of caves, betrayal, and wondering if God had forgotten his promise. But here's what David didn't understand in those cave sand, what you're just beginning to grasp in your season of hiddenness. God wasn't punishing him, God was protecting him. Every year in the wilderness was building something in David's character that a comfortable throne never could. The patience to lead, the humility to serve, the unshakable faith that comes only from depending on God when human help fails. You've been David in the cave, haven't you? Anointed but not appointed, called but not commissioned, gifted but not given the platform. And the enemy has been whispering the same lie to you that he whispered to David. God changed his mind about you. But what if I told you that every year you spent feeling forgotten was actually God preparing you for something so significant that premature exposure would have destroyed both you and your assignment? What felt like prison was a prophetic vault. You see, most people think strategic hiddenness is about being small, quiet, and unnoticed. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a lion in the tall grass, not silent from fear, silent from strategy. Lions don't roar while they're hunting. They position themselves. They watch. They wait. And when the moment comes when their prey is exactly where it needs to be, they strike with a power that shakes the earth. You've been positioned, chosen one. Every rejection that stung was repositioning. Every door that slammed was redirected. Every season of silence was God moving you into perfect alignment for the moment when your roar would matter most. But here's where most people miss it. They think the hiding was about waiting for their time to come. The hiding was about becoming the person who could handle what's coming. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him from the burning bush. 40 years. But when Pharaoh finally saw Moses again, he wasn't looking at the same stammering prince who had fled Egypt. He was facing a man who had been refined by solitude, strengthened by struggle, and given authority that no palace could provide. Joseph spent 13 years in slavery and prison before Pharaoh's dream launched him into leadership. 13 years of injustice. But those weren't wasted years, they were investment years. Every moment of suffering was building the character that could save nations without being corrupted by power. And you've been in your wilderness for decades. But unlike the generation that wandered in circles for 40 years, you've been walking forward in the dark, trusting God's voice even when you couldn't see his hand. This isn't the part where you retire, this is the part where you re-emerge. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times have you looked at younger people stepping into leadership and thought, if only I had their energy, their opportunities, their platforms? How many times have you believed the lie that your season of influence has passed? That's not age talking. That's the enemy's greatest weapon against the chosen ones in their final assignment. He wants you to believe that gray hair means God is done with you. He wants you to think that retirement from your career means retirement from your calling. But God doesn't retire his generals, he graduates them. The problem with the American church is that we've bought into a youth-obsessed culture that mistakes energy for authority, noise for anointing, and platforms for power. But God's greatest moves have always come through seasoned vessels who've learned to trust him in the dark. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. 84. She'd been a widow for over 70 years, spending day and night in the temple, praying, fasting, waiting. Most people would have called her irrelevant. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, she was the first to proclaim redemption to all who looked for it in Jerusalem. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain, not give me a rocking chair, not give me a comfortable retirement. Give me this mountain." The giants looked at his age and laughed. But Caleb understood something they didn't. His strength wasn't in his muscles anymore, it was in his history with God. You think your best days are behind you. You think your influence is diminishing. You think God has moved on to younger, stronger vessels. Listen to me carefully. The most dangerous person to the kingdom of darkness isn't someone who's never been tested. It's someone who's been through hell and came out praising God. It's someone who's learned to worship in the waiting room, to praise in the valley, to trust when their eyes see nothing but impossibility. That's you, chosen one. You're not getting older, you're getting more dangerous to the forces of darkness. You're not slowing down spiritually, you're accelerating. Every trial you've survived, every mountain you've climbed, every tear you've cried in secret has been preparing you for this moment when God removes the veil and shows the world what He's been building in the secret place. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. The season of strategic hiddenness is almost over. The protective covering that kept you hidden while your strength was being sharpened is about to be removed. And when it is, you won't have the luxury of preparation time anymore. The world is about to see what heaven has been hiding. The question that will determine everything is this: will you step into your authority, or will you let fear convince you to stay in the cave when God is calling you to the mountain? Because what's coming next requires more than youthful energy, it requires battle-tested faith. And you, dear warrior, have passed every test. Listen to me, chosen one. For the past 6 months, maybe longer, something's been happening to your body that doctors can't explain. That heaviness in your chest when you wake up. That bone-deep exhaustion that 8 hours of sleep can't touch. That strange stillness that's been settling over you like a thick blanket you can't shake off. You've been calling it aging. You've been calling it depression. You've been calling it everything except what it actually is. Divine anesthesia. What if I told you that what you think is your body failing is actually God preparing you for the most important spiritual surgery of your lifetime? Think about this. When a surgeon operates on your heart, what's the first thing they do? They put you under. They stop your conscious mind from interfering with the procedure. They sedate every system in your body so they can work without resistance. That's exactly what the Almighty is doing to you right now. You feel heavy because heaven's operating room has weight. You feel tired because divine voltage is rewiring your nervous system while you sleep. You feel different because you are different. Something fundamental is being rebuilt inside you, and your human frame is struggling to contain what God is installing. Remember when Jacob wrestled with the angel all night? Genesis 32-25 tells us the angel touched the socket of Jacob's hip, one touch from the divine, and Jacob walked with a limp for the rest of his life. But that wasn't an injury that was marking physical evidence of a supernatural encounter. Your exhaustion isn't a weakness, dear one. It's rewiring. But here's what's going to shock you. The enemy has been whispering lies in your ear, telling you something's wrong with you, that you're losing your mind, that you're just getting old. Maybe you should see a psychiatrist, take some pills, accept that your best days are behind you. That's not medical advice, that's spiritual warfare. Because what's happening to you terrifies hell itself. They know that when God sedates a chosen one for spiritual surgery, what emerges is unstoppable. They know that what feels like paralysis to you is actually preparation for power they can't contain. Look at what happened to Saul on the Damascus road. Acts 9-8 says he was led by the hand after his encounter with Jesus because he couldn't see. For 3 days he couldn't eat or drink. His entire nervous system shut down. Why? Because when divine light hits human flesh, something has to give way. You're not having a breakdown, beloved. You're having a breakthrough disguised as a breakdown. That depression you've been fighting, it wasn't a mental illness. It was anesthesia for the spiritual surgery God needed to perform on your heart. That anxiety that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., that's not panic, that's your spirit, sensing the magnitude of what's being downloaded into your consciousness. The psalmist knew this mystery when he wrote in Psalm 46-10, "Be still and know that I am God." The Hebrew word for be still is raphahit, means to let go, to cease striving, to become limp. God was commanding a divine paralysis so his people could receive what their hyperactive minds couldn't handle. Your body has felt heavy because glory has weight. Your thoughts have felt foggy because divine intelligence is being installed and your old operating system is being deleted. Your energy has been depleted because resurrection power requires everything natural to die first. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. This spiritual paralysis isn't permanent, it's preparation, and the window for this divine surgery is closing fast. Right now, while you're sitting there feeling that familiar heaviness in your limbs, something is completing. The rewiring is almost finished. The anesthesia is wearing off. And what's about to wake up inside you will shock everyone who thought you were just getting old. Daniel 12:3 promises, "Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens." But before you can shine, you have to be still. Before you can move in power, you have to be paralyzed by presence. Every morning you've struggled to get out of bed wasn't laziness, it was learning to depend on God's strength when yours isn't enough. Every day you've felt disconnected from the world wasn't isolation, it was divine insulation while heaven worked on your spiritual circuitry. If your body has felt heavy, right, it wasn't weakness, it was rewiring, because what you thought was your end is actually your beginning. And when this spiritual surgery is complete, when the divine anesthesia finally lifts, you're going to discover that what nearly killed you was actually what qualified you for what's coming next. But are you ready for what happens when a sedated saint finally wakes up with heaven's voltage running through their veins? The surface is lying to you. Underneath, everything is unraveling. You feel it when you watch the news, don't you? That gnawing sensation that what they're telling you isn't the whole truth. You see politicians making promises they know they can't keep. Economists pretending inflation is temporary, religious leaders preaching prosperity while their own foundations crack beneath them. Dear chosen one, what you're witnessing isn't just political theater or economic uncertainty. This is the systematic dismantling of every man-made structure that humanity has placed their trust in. And God is allowing it, no, God is orchestrating it because He's about to reveal what can truly be trusted. Look around you. The government that promised to protect you can't even protect its own secrets. The banks that hold your retirement funds are printing money faster than they can count it. The churches that were supposed to be your sanctuary are splitting down denominational lines over politics instead of proclaiming the gospel. The media that claimed to inform you has become a propaganda machine that wouldn't recognize the truth if it bit them on their lying tongues. But here's what's going to shock you to your core. This isn't happening to you. This is happening for you. Daniel 2:44 declares with thunderous authority, "In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed." Did you catch that? When earthly kingdoms are shaking, when human systems are failing, when man-made structures are crumbling, that's when God's kingdom becomes visible. You think this economic instability is random? You think the breakdown of institutions is accidental? You think the chaos in Washington and Wall Street just happened to occur while you were praying for God to move? No. This is divine demolition, beloved. God is tearing down what was built on sand so He can reveal what was built on the rock. But here's where it gets personal, and this might cut deep. How much of your security have you placed in these failing systems? How much of your peace depends on your 401k balance? How much of your hope rests on which politician wins the next election? How much of your faith is actually in government programs instead of God's provision? Stop clinging to what's collapsing. If you hold on to Egypt, you'll drown with it. Remember the Israelites? 400 years they lived in Egypt. 400 years they built their lives around Egyptian systems, Egyptian economy, Egyptian security. When God called them out, many of them wanted to go back. They preferred the slavery they knew to the freedom they couldn't see. They'd rather have Egyptian leeks and onions than manna from heaven. But here's the word that's burning in my spirit right now. Only what's hidden in God will survive what's coming. Not hidden from God, hidden in God. Colossians 3:3 tells us, "Your life is hidden with Christ in God." That means when the shaking comes, when the systems fail, when the bottom falls out of everything humanity trusts you, remain untouched because your life isn't built on their foundation. The stock market can crash, but Philippians 4:19 says, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus." The healthcare system can fail, but by His stripes you are healed. The government can betray you, but the King of Kings never abdicates His throne. You want to know why you've felt so restless lately? Why can't you get comfortable? Because your spirit recognizes that everything shakeable is being shaken, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. The question that will determine your survival isn't whether you see the shaking, it's whether you've already positioned yourself in the unshakable. If you've felt it beneath the surface, drop, "I'm preparing quietly." But preparation requires more than recognition. It requires radical trust in the one whose kingdom has no end. Are you ready to discover what it means to be truly hidden when the final collapse comes? Dear chosen one, if you've made it this far, if you're still watching while others have scrolled away, it's because something inside you is waking up. Something that's been dormant for decades is starting to stir. And what I'm about to tell you about the third sign will either terrify you or liberate you completely. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That electric current running through your veins at 3 a.m., that sudden jolt of energy when you should be tired, that overwhelming sense that something massive is building inside your chest, ready to explode. You've been shaking, and your doctor can't explain it. Your family thinks it's nerves. Your friends think it's your age catching up with you. But I'm here to tell you something that will change everything you thought you knew about what's happening to your body. That's not anxiety, that's activation. Listen to me carefully. When the Spirit of the living God begins to move through human flesh, when heaven's voltage hits earthly vessels, the body responds. Acts 2:2 tells us that when the Holy Spirit came upon the disciples, suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind. Not gentle, not quiet. Mighty, rushing. That surge you're feeling, that's the same power that raised Christ from the dead now coursing through your mortal frame. Romans 8:11 declares, "If the Spirit of Him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, He who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies." Your mortal body, right now, at 75, 80, 90 years old. The same resurrection power that split graves and shook mountains is rewiring your nervous system for what's coming. But here's what hell doesn't want you to know. Here's why the enemy has been whispering lies about your age, your relevance, your expiration date. He's terrified of what happens when someone who's walked with God for 8 decades finally gets plugged into heaven's power grid. You think you're too old for this surge? Moses was 80 when God's fire hit him at the burning bush. Ezekiel was in his 70s when heaven opened and showed him visions that are still shaking theologians today. Anna the prophetess was 84 when the Spirit revealed that the baby in her arms was the Messiah of the world. The surge doesn't care about your birth certificate. It cares about your availability. This is like lightning crawling through your bloodstream, not destroying you, energizing you, not breaking you down, building you up with supernatural voltage that makes demons tremble and angels take notice. You know what that restlessness is? You know why you can't sit still anymore, why you feel like something's about to burst out of your chest. You're being pulled from hiding. After decades of preparation, after years of refinement, after seasons of silence, heaven is saying, now, this is your moment. Don't fight it. Don't medicate it. Don't explain it away. This surge isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. The prophet Joel declared, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your old men will dream dreams, not remembering dreams, not wish for dreams, dream dreams, present tense, active, alive, right now." This is the surge they feared. This is why the attacks intensified. This is why the isolation came. This is why everything tried to convince you that you were finished, that your time had passed, that God was done with you. Because they knew that once this surge hit you, once you felt heaven's electricity in your bones, you'd become unstoppable. Type "I feel the surge" if something's waking up right now, if power is building, if you know deep in your spirit that what's stirring inside you is about to change everything, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly why this surge terrifies the kingdom of darkness more than any weapon they've ever faced. Listen to me, chosen one. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been told you're too old, too late, too forgotten. You've sat in church pews while pastors preached about God using the young, the bold, the connected. You've watched your own children dismiss your wisdom as outdated. You've felt invisible in a world that worships youth and speed. But what if I told you that every single lie they whispered about your irrelevance was actually a confession of their deepest terror? What if your age isn't your disqualification? It's your ammunition. Think about this. Moses was 80 when God called him to face Pharaoh. 80 when Pharaoh saw this old man with a walking stick approaching his throne, he probably laughed. This is what threatens my empire. This weathered shepherd from the wilderness. But Pharaoh didn't know what you now know. He didn't understand that Moses had spent 40 years in hiding, being refined by fire, stripped of Egyptian pride, emptied of self-reliance until all that remained was raw, unshakable dependence on the Almighty. And when Moses opened his mouth, the Red Sea split. You survived the cave. You endured the silence. You passed the test. And now heaven is releasing you. But here's what's going to shock you to your very core. Here's the revelation that will shatter every limitation you've accepted about your season of life. This is the version of you hell hoped never made it out of hiding. Do you understand what that means? Every heart attack that should have taken you out, that was hell trying to stop this version of you from emerging. Every financial crisis that should have destroyed you, that was darkness attempting to prevent this moment. Every depression that whispered, just give up, that was the enemy's desperate attempt to silence the weapon you were becoming. But you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still believing. And that terrifies the kingdom of darkness more than any young evangelist with 1 million followers ever could. Because you carry something they don't have. You carry the authority of tested faith. You carry the wisdom of a walk through hell and came out praising God experience. You carry the fearlessness that only comes when you've lost everything and discovered that God alone is enough. Caleb understood this. At 85 years old, while younger men were retiring to their tents, Caleb marched up to Joshua and declared, "Give me this mountain." Numbers 14:12. "The giants are still there," he said, "the same giants that terrified the 12 spies 45 years earlier. But now I'm ready for them." What made an 85-year-old man ready for giants? Time, testing, the slow, steady fire that burns away everything that isn't pure gold. That's you, chosen one. You're not past your prime. You're 85-year-old Caleb, standing before your mountain, and hell is shaking because they know what happens when someone your age finally says, "I'm not stepping aside. I'm stepping up." But here's the part that's going to bring tears to your eyes. This isn't just about you. Your grandchildren are watching. Your community is desperate. This generation is drowning in confusion, and they need an anchor. They need someone who's been through the storm and can say with absolute certainty, God is faithful. You're not too late. You're right on time, and they're going to need what you carry. Think about Anna, the prophetess. Luke 2:36 tells us she was 84 years old, widowed for most of her life, spending every day in the temple. Most people probably thought she was just a sweet old lady who'd lost her mind to grief. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, she was the first to recognize the Messiah of the world. Why her? Why not the priests? Why not the scholars? Because she had something they didn't have. She had time in the secret place. She had decades of pure, undistracted fellowship with the Most High. That's your secret weapon. While this generation has been distracted by technology, by careers, by building earthly kingdoms, you've been building something eternal. You've been refined in a secret place. You've been prepared for such a time as this. And here's the revelation that's going to change everything you think you know about God's timing. What if God didn't call you early because He trusted you late? What if He knew that this moment, this exact moment in human history, would require someone who'd been tested by fire and proven faithful? What if he knew that what's coming would need a voice that can't be bought, can't be intimidated, can't be silenced, because it's already lost everything this world values and found everything that matters? The young can be seduced. Success can be corrupted. The famous can be compromised. But you've got nothing left to lose and everything eternal to gain. This is why they tried so hard to convince you that your time was over. This is why the enemy worked overtime to make you feel forgotten, irrelevant, invisible. Because if you ever woke up to who you really are, if you ever understood the spiritual authority flowing through your weathered hands, their reign of deception would crumble. Well, chosen one, consider this your wake-up call. The hiding is over, the silence has been broken, and what emerges from this moment will shake both heaven and hell. But the question that will determine everything is this: will you finally step into the authority your scars have earned you? Look at your hands right now. Really look at them. Those aren't the hands of someone who was forgotten. Those are the hands of someone who was forged. You've been misunderstood for decades, haven't you? Your own family calls you the quiet one. Your church overlooks you for leadership positions. Your children think you're just getting old when you mention the stirring in your spirit. But what if I told you that every single moment of being overlooked was actually heaven's strategy to keep you hidden until now? You weren't passed over, dear one. You were positioned. Think about this carefully. Why did you survive that heart attack at 67 when stronger men didn't make it? Why did God keep waking you up at 3 a.m. when you begged him to let you rest? Why have you endured decades of feeling invisible while watching others get promoted, celebrated, recognized? Because what you carry isn't ordinary, it's strategic. Heaven hid you like a general in plain clothes. While the enemy was scanning the horizon for threats, you were walking among them undetected. While he was tracking the loud voices and big platforms, you were being prepared in the secret place where his radar couldn't reach. You think you've been sidelined. You've been in special ops training. Consider Moses, 40 years in Midian, forgotten by Egypt, ignored by his own people. 80 years old when God finally said, "Now." Why the delay? Because God needed someone who had been broken of self-reliance, someone who understood that victory comes not by might nor by power, but by his Spirit alone. You weren't overlooked. You were over-prepared. But here's what breaks my heart. Some of you are sitting there right now, still believing the lie that your best years are behind you. Still thinking that God promotes the young and retires the old. Still convinced that your season of impact has passed. Let me shatter that deception with one verse that will rock your world. Even in old age, they will still produce fruit. They will remain vital and green. Psalm 92:14. Vital and green. Not fading and forgotten. Vital and green at 70, at 80, at 90 years old. Why? Because you carry something the enemy has been trying to eliminate for decades. You carry institutional memory of when God actually moved in America. You remember when churches had power, when prayer changed things, when families stayed together. You're not just senior citizens, you're spiritual archives of what this nation used to be. And right now, in this hour of crisis, heaven needs those archives activated. You've been marked, chosen one, not with visible signs, but with invisible authority. Every tear you've cried in secret gave you access to the heart of God. Every time you stayed faithful when others walked away, you earned stripes in the spiritual realm. Every sleepless night you spent interceding for your prodigal children, you were building a resume that hell recognizes and heaven honors. The prophet Daniel was marked too. Captured as a teenager, spent 70 years in exile, watching 4 kingdoms rise and fall. But when the angel came to him in Daniel 10:11, what did he say? "Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, not by man, but by heaven." That's you. Highly esteemed in the courts of heaven, while feeling invisible on earth. But here's the urgency burning in my spirit tonight. The season of hiding is ending. God is about to pull his hidden generals out of retirement and put them on the front lines. Not because the young aren't capable, but because what's coming requires wisdom that can only be earned through decades of walking with God through fire. You've been marked quietly for decades, but the quiet season is over. I need you to feel the weight of this moment. While you've been thinking you're too old, too tired, too late, heaven has been saying you're too valuable to waste, too seasoned to sideline, too strategic to leave unused. Your grey hair isn't a sign of decline, it's a crown of wisdom. Your wrinkles aren't marks of aging, they're etchings of endurance. Your slower pace isn't a weakness, it's the measured walk of someone who knows where they're going. The enemy worked overtime to convince you that your season was over because he knew that if you ever fully realized who you are and what you carry, his reign of terror would be threatened by a generation that refuses to go quietly into retirement. You weren't overlooked, you were over-prepared. And now, the preparation is about to meet its purpose. If that hits you deep, right, I was marked quietly. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly why your decades of hiddenness were never about punishment, but about preparing you for the most important assignment of your entire life. Listen to me, dear one. While the world has been chasing fireworks, God has been building furnaces. While they've been obsessed with overnight success, heaven has been orchestrating a slow burn strategy that spans decades. You think you're behind. You think you missed your moment. You think God forgot about you while he blessed everyone else. That's the biggest lie the enemy ever whispered in your ear. Look at your hands right now. Really look at them. Those aren't the hands of someone who's finished. Those are the hands of someone who's been seasoned by fire. Every line tells a story. Every scar bears witness. Every callus proves you didn't quit when quitting would have been easier. God is a slow burn strategist. You were never a spark. You were always a flame. But here's what breaks my heart. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that your quiet faithfulness didn't matter, that your decades of showing up, praying through, holding on when everyone else let go, that it was all just survival. No, beloved, it was a strategy. Think about Martha Wilson from Brooklyn, 73 years old, widowed at 45. For 28 years, she sat in the same pew, third row from the front, praying for her grandson who's been addicted to heroin for 15 years. 28 years of the same prayer. 28 years of people telling her to let go and let God. 28 years of wondering if her words were just echoing off empty air. Last Tuesday, her grandson walked into that church, fell to his knees at the altar, and cried out for Jesus to save him. 28 years of slow burn prayer, ignited in one supernatural moment. You think Martha wasted those years? You think God wasn't listening? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, God needed someone with enough endurance to pray for almost 3 decades without seeing results? You see, the world measures impact by applause, but heaven measures impact by faithfulness. The world celebrates the sprint, but God crowns the marathon. Consider Frank Rodriguez, 82 years old, Vietnam veteran from Queens. Came home in 1971, carrying trauma that almost killed him. Spent 50 years fighting flashbacks, nightmares, survivor's guilt. 50 years of people telling him to get over it. 50 years of wondering why God let him live when his buddies didn't make it home. Last month, Frank stood in front of 30 young veterans, fresh from Afghanistan and Iraq, and spoke words that literally saved 3 of them from suicide that very night. 50 years of carrying that weight, so he could become the voice that pulls others back from the edge. You didn't fizzle, you were forged. But here's what you need to understand about God's slow burn strategy. It's not about time, it's about timing. Moses spent 40 years in Pharaoh's palace learning to be somebody, then 40 years in the wilderness learning to be nobody. Only Thanat, 80 years old, was he ready to be who God called him to be. 80 years old. In a world that worships youth, God chose an octogenarian to lead the greatest liberation in human history. God didn't need your youth, he needed your endurance. Your energy was impressive at 25, but your faith at 75, that's supernatural. Your optimism was sweet at 30, but your hope at 80, that's unshakable. Your passion was beautiful at 40, but your perseverance at 90, that's unstoppable. Every setback taught you something success never could. Every closed door redirected you towards something greater. Every year you thought was wasted was actually building character that could handle what's coming next. You know why you're still here. You know why God keeps waking you up every morning when others half your age didn't make it to see today? Because the world is about to need what you carry. This generation is about to discover that wisdom isn't downloaded, it's earned. Character isn't inherited, it's forged. Authority isn't given, it's proven. And you, chosen one, you've been proving it for decades while nobody was watching. But somebody was watching. Heaven was taking notes. Angels were recording every act of faithfulness. God was preparing you for this exact moment when the world would finally be desperate enough to listen to voices that have been tested by time. The fire you've walked through didn't burn you up. It burned away everything that wasn't eternal. What remains isn't just flesh and blood. What remains is pure gold. Type still burning if you know you're not done yet. If something in your spirit is confirming that your greatest chapter hasn't been written yet. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly why every year of preparation has been building toward this moment when God says, "It's time to stop hiding." Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to carry 3 eternal truths with you like precious stones in your heart. First, remember this. You were never a spark meant to burn bright and die quickly. You are a flame-steady, enduring, refined by decades of faithfulness. God is a slow-burn strategist, and every year you've walked with him has been adding fuel to the fire he's about to release through you. Second, your hiding was never abandonment, it was strategy. While others built platforms, you were being built in private. While they sought applause, you were learning to hear his whisper. Your silence wasn't surrender, it was surveillance. You've been watching, learning, preparing for this exact moment when the world would need what only seasoned faith can provide. Third, the restlessness you feel, that sense that something monumental is coming that's not anxiety, that's activation. Your spirit is picking up frequencies from heaven, preparing you for an assignment that requires decades of preparation to handle. But here's what I need you to know with absolute certainty. You are not walking this path alone. The same God who called you before you took your first breath is still working in your life right now, in this very moment. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you. Romans 8:31 reminds us, if God is for us, who can be against us? That's not just a verse, that's your reality. And right here, in this community of believers, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your journey. We're not just viewers on a screen, we're a family connected by the same calling, carrying the same fire, walking the same narrow path that leads to supernatural purpose. Let me ask you this. Now that you understand you've been hidden for a reason, prepared for a purpose, and positioned for such a time as this, what will you do with this revelation? How will you step into the authority that your decades of faithfulness have earned you? Before you answer that question in your heart, join me in prayer. Wherever you are, in your living room, your kitchen, your car, close your eyes and let me speak over your life. Heavenly Father, I place my hand on the shoulder of every precious soul who has stayed with us through this entire message. Lord, you see their hearts. You know their struggles. You've counted every tear, recorded every prayer, witnessed every moment they chose faith over fear. God, breathe fresh wind into their weary souls tonight. Where they feel forgotten, remind them they are treasured. Where they feel finished, show them they are just beginning. Where they feel ordinary, reveal to them the extraordinary calling you've placed on their lives. Open doors that no man can shut. Provide strength for every challenge ahead. Surround them with divine connections that will encourage their hearts and confirm their calling. Give them dreams and visions that clarify their next steps. Most of all, Father, let them feel your presence right now. Let them know that every year of preparation, every season of hiddenness, every moment of faithfulness has been preparing them for this hour when you need steady flames, not fleeting sparks. In Jesus' mighty name, I seal this prayer and release them into their destiny. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what God spoke to your heart tonight. Ask questions. Tell us how we can pray for you. This community is here to support you, encourage you, and remind you that your best days aren't behind you, they're ahead of you. And please, share this message with someone who needs to hear it. There's someone in your life who feels forgotten, overlooked, past their prime. They need to know that God's slow burn strategy is still at work in their life. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Your faithfulness to watch until the very end tells me everything I need to know about your heart. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. Your calling isn't finished, and neither are we. Until we meet again, remember, you are chosen, you are hidden for a reason, and your flame is still burning bright. God bless you, warrior, your finest